So today we're playing horrors with an underplayed creature that just never gets seen, but can close out games with the right build around cards in the deck. This is just so much fun to play with. Hey everyone, Hex here, and today on the ladder I've got a sweet deck that just seems to win out of nowhere. Before we get going, and as always, I really appreciate your support for this channel, and if you haven't yet, go ahead and click the subscribe button below to not miss out on future content. But let's get into today's deck, built around two 7-drop black horror creatures that seemingly win on their own. Starting with my new favourite card that just doesn't get played much, it's Dusk Mangler. It's a 7-drop, 5/4 horror that when it ETBs, each opponent sacks a creature, discards a card, and loses 4 life. The downside is that as an additional cost to cast this card, you must sack a creature, discard a card, or lose 4 life. Obviously, we're not going to do this, and this card will be generally cheated out using one of 2 methods. I can't explain enough how good this card is against big threats like Titans and Sheoldreds, especially if you get to flicker it or you're able to reanimate it each turn. The other big horror is Toxrill, a 7/7 7-drop that says at the beginning of each end step put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures get -1/-1 for each slime counter on it. When a creature with a slime counter on it dies, you create a 1/1 slug, and you get to sack a slug to draw a card. So this card is predominantly useful against go wide strategies, but it's a decent card draw engine too, and a 7/7 creature is pretty hard to get through most times. So how can we play these creatures without paying 7 mana and paying Dusk Mangler's cost too? Well, we're using either Cruelty of Gix, specifically its 3rd chapter, which we can read ahead to, where we get to put a target creature from any graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. Now, our creatures do have to be in the graveyard for this to happen, and in black and white that's not always that easy, but we do have some methods. We can also reanimate from opponents' graveyards too though, if needed. The other card is Spirit Sister's Call. This enchantment needs to be built around, but I think I managed it here. It says at the beginning of your end step, choose target permanent in your graveyard. You may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. If you do, return it to the battlefield. If it leaves again in the future, exile it. So how do we discard? Well, we're using Lilianas and a couple of Restoration of Eiganjos. Now, opponents also like to discard our cards as well, so this small set of cards seems to do remarkably well. Also, Cruelty of Gix's 2nd chapter allows us to tutor a card, albeit lose 3 life doing so. We do need creatures to sacrifice, and we've got Wedding Announcements and Wandering Emperors to do that. They seem to do pretty well at creating cheap sackable bodies for Spirit Sister's Call, and our Rite of Oblivions, which exile opponents' permanents if we can sack one of ours. Other cards in the deck include Cut Down, some Bankbusters, and our secret tech, Touch the Spirit Realm. This card both exiles opponents' creatures, but also can flicker our own Dusk Mangler to get extra value. We're playing 25 lands with Takenumas and Eiganjos for value, so that's our deck. It's crazy good and it's super fun to play with as well. I played out some games, including one where the Mangler and Touch the Spirit Realm took our opponents out after they were setting up lethal themselves. Anyway, check them out for yourselves and I'll speak to you after the games. Alright, on the draw here, and yeah, this looks like a really good hand actually. I like the early interaction, and having a Spirit Sister's Call is also really nice. Toxrill seems a bit ambitious, but having one in your hand is not that bad. Opponent mulligans here. And yeah, we get to play our swamp here and hold open Cut Down. As long as we hit our land drops, I think we're going to be, this is going to be a good game. Alright, so Grixis for our opponent here as we draw another land, which is good. 3rd land drop for our opponent. And a Pilfer. Alright, so I wonder if they are a discard style deck. Hopefully they discard our Toxrill, that would be nice. They do our job for us. I have noticed a lot of games our opponents with things like Lilianas, they end up actually helping us out, so we're definitely using that card to our advantage if the opponents have it, as they play Tainted Indulgence. So I'm wondering if they're a Reanimator deck themselves, as this tends to be used in those type of decks. Alright, we get our Dusk Mangler. So this is my 7-drop that I absolutely love. It has an awesome E.T.B, but you don't really want to pay 7 mana for it, as there are big downsides to you casting that card. And yeah, opponents just hitting land drops, not doing much, but we've missed a couple for ourselves. Not that great. Interestingly though, we are going to have to discard to hand size, so another small little way for us to discard. And yeah, getting rid of the Mangler here, because it's a card I'm going to want to reanimate later, and Toxrill I'd rather cast if we ever get that chance. Opponent plays Pilfer and gets rid of our Gix, one of our reanimation spells. But we finally find our 4th mana and get to play or hold open Emperor here. Opponent with a Seize the Storm in their graveyard. So yeah, lots of spells, and they're going to create a big monstrous token and try and kill us that way, probably with a Fable to try and copy it. But we can play our Wandering Emperor, see if this resolves, and it does immediately. So that's good to know that maybe the opponent doesn't have any non-creature spell counters. Now I opted to make a 2nd Samurai here, as presumably one of these is going to die, and I want to be holding open I want a Samurai on the battlefield to use in conjunction with Rite of Oblivion. And yeah, Invoke Despair from our opponent. It's going to force us to sacrifice one of our creatures, sacrifice our Wandering Emperor, and yeah, we have a 2/2 on the battlefield, which is exactly what we want. So if they were to play a creature now, at least we have Rite of Oblivion available. Yeah, and we just drew another Toxrill. So land-wise, I think we've got 25 in this deck. We should really be hitting more land drops than we are. It's just unfortunate. Opponent seems to be only drawing land, so not having the same problems as we're having. But we do have a full grip of cards here. Burn down the house, and just going to create some 1/1s. And just cut down one of them whilst we have an opportunity. This card's not doing much in our hand anyway. So our opponent can attack us now with 2 1/1s. They could always ping our 2/2 there, which they decide not to. So we get a wedding announcement here. Not really sure why they didn't attack last turn, but we get to play our wedding announcement. This resolves, and now we can start building a board state, which is exactly what we need. And then maybe we can find a way to get these creatures into the graveyard. Don't forget, we do have a Dusk Mangler back there, so Spirit Sister's Call is a must get resolved. As our opponent decides to, or its opponent with Arcane Bombardment actually, and a Bolt are 2/2. So Arcane Bombardment is a really good target here for our Rite of Oblivion. Really happy we've got this card here, and we've managed to get a token on the battlefield. Get a Bankbuster down and make our 1/1. Alright, so this is a tough game against this Grixis deck. Both of us on 16 life still. Opponent only down to the last 3 cards though, but we've seen what kind of deck they are. And Invoke Despair, I mean, that is really good. Takes out our wedding announcement, takes out our creature, draws them a card, and no way out. Alright, so we have to discard 2 cards, and we will gratefully discard our Toxrills. Thank you very much, opponent. And alright, Swamp, which means we get to play the Cruelty of Gix, and yeah, we'll just go straight for the 3rd chapter here. This gets to put a creature from any graveyard onto the battlefield. Opponent has a Shouldered, we have Toxrills and Dusk Mangler. Dusk Mangler not so good here, as the opponent will just sacrifice one of the 1/1s. Toxrill, yeah, that can be pretty devastating. And then there's Shieldred. Up to for Shieldred, I mean, you could pick either of the cards here. I don't think it matters too much, as opponent has, yeah, they just pass their turn. Shielded activates, they lose a couple of life. So we've immediately got some value here. Opponent grasps it. Yeah, in hindsight, maybe I should have brought back the Toxrill, but it would be dead right now. I don't think it's going to matter too much, to be honest. We just need to get the Spirit Sister's Call onto the battlefield. And there's the opponent's Seize the Storm. So a 13-13. And yeah, they're getting busy and attacking. We'll block the 2/2. Take as little damage as possible. And we draw a Plains. So I kind of like where we are. However, we do have to deal with this 13-13 that will kill us if we're not careful. We get to draw off our Bankbuster, and yeah, we're just going to Rite of Oblivion that, sacrificing our artifact. And opponent is down to a couple of Devils onto the board. And yeah, going to attack us here. We go down to 8. Just a land. We draw a land ourselves. This allows us to play Dusk Mangler, and we can discard one of our Spirit Sister's Calls. Don't want to take 4 damage in doing so. So as this E.T.B, each opponent has to sacrifice a creature, discard a card, lose 4 life. Probably not what they expected to see hit the battlefield this turn, but you can see how much value we've got from that already. Opponent down to 8 now, and they had to discard. All right, so they've invoked the winds. All right, so they've stolen our creature. That's a great top deck. But we can channel the Dusk Mangler here with our Touch the Spirit Realm. We'll take that back at the end of the turn. That will trigger, and if we flip our triggers around here, we get to find the other copy of Dusk Mangler from our graveyard, and I think we win the game. As one hits the battlefield, opponent has to sack their devil, lose 4 life, and then our Spirit Sister's Call is going to trigger itself, and we can sacrifice our Dusk Mangler and do the other 4 damage. So we've won out of nowhere there. That is excellent, even with an Invoke the Wind stealing our creature. Alright, on the play here with an acceptable hand. Nice little curve going on here. We get to play our tap land on turn 1, and then we have a turn 2, 3, 4, and 5 play. So this looks pretty good. And yeah, the opponent plays a island and a Delver of Secrets. So definitely a blue deck here with the counter spells, I would assume. We get to play our Bankbuster though, and opponent's Delver of Secrets does not transform. So we swerve that first threat, and they attack us with their 1/1. And we go back down to 20. Rite of Oblivion's a nice draw. We get to play our untapped Shattered Sanctum. Now opponent does have 2 blue mana open. Just going to pass our turn here and draw from the Bankbuster. If we can keep drawing, then we can stay up with the keep up with the opponent here. They impulse, so we could have played the Restoration of Eiganjo that turn. I really didn't want it countered. It would have obviously stopped them from playing this card draw, but we're okay. The Bankbuster's a pretty good card to have on the battlefield, and the Delver does become a 3/2 now. And opponent with their 3rd land, and they can attack us for 3. Take that. So opponent has Thirst for Discovery in their hand there, which presumably they're going to want to play. So fingers crossed we can get a spell resolve this turn. However, actually the Wandering Emperor is going to be fantastic here, because I know what they're going to do now. They're going to play that card draw spell. And there it is, and then we can flesh out the Wandering Emperor in response. And they're tapped out, and we get to exile this 3/2. So the Wandering Emperor, fantastic card against mono blue decks in that exact reason. So that must be pretty annoying for the opponent. Wonder if they have a follow-up creature there. No, they just pass their turn. Alright, so is that the window we need to do something here? I mean, we could try and get down the Cruelty of Gix. I presume that will get countered. We get to play our Restoration of Eiganjo instead though. Hold open 2 mana in case we need to pay for Mate Disappear. And we get to ramp with Looking for a Plains. So right now I'm pretty comfortable with this game. Wandering Emperor, Bankbuster, these are great cards to have on the battlefield against these type of control decks. And it's a consider for our opponent. So they're definitely digging for something. You would have thought if they had a Hortitude, they would have played it last turn. 5th mana. And it's another Delver of Secrets. An acceptable card. They hold open 4 mana. We don't have to play any spells at the moment though. We can just draw with our Bankbuster. Then we have our Wandering Emperor to create tokens, and the Eiganjo there, as you saw, discarding our Toxrill. That's the reason that card is predominantly in this deck. It ramps, but it also allows us to discard our creatures. We don't have any Spirited Companions or anything like that in the deck. This is a horrors only deck, so the Eiganjo is definitely in there just for ramp and the discard effect. Delver stays a 1/1. So maybe a bit lucky there. If that had become a 3-2, we'd definitely be looking at losing our Wandering Emperor. Obviously they could bounce our 2-2 instead, and they have a Tolarian Terror. Still with the 2 blue mana open, you've got to expect that to be a counter spell. And we get the Restoration of Eiganjo transforming. Comes a 3-4 and creates spirits. Get to put a counter on our 3-4, make it a 4-5. No great attacks here, but we do have the 7 mana for Toxrill. Now, if opponent wants to counter this, be my guest, it's fine. It's fine in the graveyard, and it's fine if they want to spend their counter spell here. It means they're not going to counter anything later on in the game. Yeah, Essence Scatter, which is fine. If that's what they have in their hand, they were always going to play it at some point. Delver here doesn't transform. Opponent's not having any luck with their Delver today in a deck which is full of instants and sorceries. Go to attacks and they are... Okay, so they're sending their Tolarian Terror. We have a block here if we want to. We can crew the Bankbuster with our enchantment and double block. This is a bit susceptible in case the opponent has like a Fading Hope or something. But I really want my Emperor to stay alive. And I don't really care about the Bankbuster at the moment. I'm just... I just want to get this Cruelty of Gix down. Okay, and they just... yeah, no Fading Hopes or anything. So another Terror for the opponent. They take out our 3-4. Sorry, they take out our Bankbuster. And we get to play our land. Just keep the Wandering Emperor going up. So they're down to 3 cards. We do have an attack here, though, with the Architects of Restoration as first strike and Vigilance. So I doubt the opponent's going to want to block. It does create another 1-1, which is exactly what we need for these Rite of Oblivions that we have in our hand. I don't really want to pay any ward costs on the Terror, and I'm more worried about this card flipping or transforming in the upkeep. So we will attempt to blow up this 1-1, see what they're going to do about this. Obviously they've definitely got interaction, but maybe they're thinking this is bait. If we're in our second main, we can use the Rite of Oblivion for a second time. And they slip out the back the Del. No, they don't. They slip out the back the Terror. All right, so they're playing around Rite of Oblivion here, which is a cute little play. No point playing the Gix just now, as we don't have enough mana to pay for the counterspell taxes. So this is a long old game. We've got the opponent down to 3 cards still. And they go to attack our Wandering Emperor. They really don't like this card. Straight up 2-2 can block that. No Haughty Djinns in this deck, and opponent scoops it up. Alright, they've had enough. I'll take those. Alright, on the draw here. And yeah, this is a really good hand. If we can just hit our land drops, I'm looking forward to playing with this one. So opponent with a swamp. We can play our tap land here. At least we have a turn 2 play now with the Bankbuster. And that is exactly what we'll do. Second Cruelty of Gix for us there. Definitely need a land next turn. Opponent with Evolved Sleeper. Ooh, just a Mangler. Not the best card, but opponent looks like they're on a black deck, or it's black and white like us, but fingers crossed our Liliana can be used to put our Dusk Mangler in our graveyard. Opponent is just leveling up their Sleeper. And I guess they're just going to attack us for a bunch. Ooh, a tap land there. Rafine's Tower, so maybe an Esper style deck. And still pretty okay with where we are. As long as we get our 4th and 5th mana drops, we'll be good. Another Bankbuster. I mean, that's not the end of the world, but Restoration of Eiganjo at least can find us a Plains. So at least we'll have 4 mana for our next turn. Now, we're going to be able to discard a card as well. We could discard the Mangler. I may discard the Bankbuster to try and just get as much down onto the battlefield as we can. We our opponent with a Sheoldred there. I think bringing back just one creature to the battlefield, if we just got rid of the Mangler and then brought it back with the Gix, isn't great against mono black. They will have much spot removal, or Liliana. So yeah, discard the Bankbuster, bring that back, try and gain some advantage over the next few turns. Get down our wedding announcement here, which will allow us to start creating some blockers. And we get a 1/1. Okay, and the opponent goes up to 22. So Sheoldred's going to be a bit annoying, but I think if we play this right, we should be alright. We should be okay here. Touch the Spirit Realm, can always deal with one of these creatures. Gonna block the 4/5 and gonna go to our end step here. So take 4 damage, go to our end step. And what we can do here is, with the 2 mana we've got, is we can actually flicker the Evolve Sleeper. It won't return until the next end step. And we're already in this end step. So opponent's only going to have the 1 creature on the board here. And then we should be able to, barring a counterspell, get this Liliana down, which is going to enable us to make the opponent sacrifice their Sheoldred. So a little play there with the Touch the Spirit Realm. Interesting. They are going to have their 1/1 that's going to drop and hit the battlefield. But yeah, I opted to do my Bankbuster because I really want to be hitting land drops. I don't really care about this this 1/1, even though we could have just cut it down in response to it entering the battlefield. We are on 6 life, so we're pretty doomed if the opponent maybe runs into several Invoke Despairs. But we're also pretty... okay, there is an Invoke Despair, so not too bad, as we do have an enchantment, a creature, and a Planeswalker. So although I don't want to lose all of this, we are going to be able to survive any damage. They're not going to draw any cards. And yeah, they have no decent attacks. So we've kind of stabilized a little bit. I do wish the Liliana was still on the battlefield so we could discard this Dusk Mangler and bring it back out with the Cruelty of Gix. Opponent does have a Sheoldred in their graveyard, so that might be our target again. I mean, it is a pretty decent card, although it's not one of our horrors. It's definitely something I have no problems in reanimating. So we'll go to attacks here. We'll just attack with a 3/4, make a 1/1. Keep our board as stable as possible. An opponent takes 2 damage with the Sheoldred. So we could have also attacked there with the Bankbusters, but I opted at the time not to do so. We get to sacrifice our 1/1, our creature, our enchantment creature, and go down to 4. We've been pretty insulated against a couple of Invoke Despairs from our opponent, and a Sheoldred as well. So we can go up to 10 now if we wanted to draw through our Bankbusters, but we've only got 5 mana. We do need to start hitting more land drops. So we get to play the Restoration of Eiganjo here to find us another Plains. And yeah, cut down the Evolve Sleeper. Opponent is on 16 life. We can gain 2 back through our Bankbuster. So I'm going to attack here. Let's try and put a bit of pressure on here. We can't just be treading water. We're a couple of Invoke Despairs away from dying ourselves. Yes, opponent down to 12. And okay, Hero's Downfall, destroying their own creature. But we'll draw before that dies to gain another 2 life. And the Bankbuster actually creates a pilot, which is nice as well, as it's more fodder for our Rite of Oblivion if we need to play that. So again, we've got the Cruelty of Gix in our hand still, and also Dusk Mangler, which is going to be really powerful later. And it's a cut down from our opponent on our pilot. Sure. So with the Hero's Downfall and the cut down there, maybe the opponent is just holding loads of removal and has just got no targets. The Eiganjo here is going to force us to discard a card. Now, my big concern is Graveyard Trespasser, so I don't really want to discard the Dusk Mangler as if we do that and they play the Trespasser, we're going to be in a bit of a pickle. So, gone for their Sheoldred again. So being on a life, we get to attack the opponent with our Bankbuster. Put them down to 8. And they draw and lose 2 more life. So we're slowly getting there. They're down to 6 life now. And invoke Despair again, which is annoying, but we get to at least survive this turn. And yeah, we got a pretty decent turn next turn. And we draw a Gix. Now, I should have just played the Dusk Mangler here. It would have done 4 damage to the opponent's face, and then I could have crewed up the Bankbuster and attacked them for 4 more. Didn't even think about it, just played the Gix to get the Sheoldred back, to crew up the Bankbuster and attack. Realising that I should have just played the Dusk Mangler in the Mangler, during that, and then hoping Sheoldred might get me through. Opponent had Hero's Downfall anyway, so they didn't die. They are only on 2 mana though, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem, but yeah, big misplay by me just then. And it's just a morbid opportunist, so I'm not going to make the same mistake again. We're just going to slam this Dusk Mangler, and yeah, this is going to do 4 damage to our opponent's face after they've sacked a creature and discarded a card. So we got there eventually. We managed to take down the Orzhov deck from our opponent. Okay, opponent goes first, and this is a mulligan for us. Slightly better hand. Don't want to go down to 5 cards though. We can definitely keep the 2 Wandering Emperors. They're 2 very good cards to have. And yeah, we can put this Spirit Sisters Call to the bottom. So, opponent with Rafine's Tower, so an Esper deck. We get to play our tap land here as well and say go. That's a swamp, and our turn. Plains for us, so slow start from us here. We do have the wedding announcement, which was a really nice draw. Opponent with reinforcements creates a couple of 1/1s, and so yeah, probably a token style deck. Expect to see Rafine hit the battlefield. We get to play our wedding announcements. Fingers crossed this resolves, which it does, and we get to make a 1/1. And opponent with their second copy of reinforcements. Alright, so this is a really strong start by them. If they can back it up. Alright, Adeline as well. Alright, this is tough. That's 5 1/1s coming at us. We can block one of them, soak up a tiny bit of damage. But we're already down to 14, and their board is way better than ours. 4th mana's nice, but there's not much we can do. The Wandering Emperor is pretty terrible against Adeline. Liliana wouldn't do too much either, as they would just sack a 1/1. And they attack with everything, yeah, why not? So we get to cast our Wandering Emperor, and create a 2/2. I think over the course of the game it's going to save us more life than the 2 life gained by exiling a 1/1. So we get to block a 1/1. And yeah, we're going to go down to 10 life here, and the opponent cuts down after blockers. They should have done that before blockers. They would have got a bit more damage through. 10 life's not great. If we play the Cruelty of Gix, so we could look for something like a Toxrill maybe, or a removal, but I think we're just way too far behind here. Nothing in the graveyards to reanimate either. So this is a pretty tough position for us to be in. Not suited completely well against these kind of decks. Toxrill's our main answer, but not being able to get it into the graveyard or play it is going to be a problem here. So this might be one of those games. I think a lot of decks, unless you have mass removal, would have struggled against all these tokens. I guess you could always put a removal into your a board wipe into the deck. I didn't see any problem in that. More reinforcements for our opponent. Alright, so they kind of got the nut draw with those cards, to be honest. Just attack us with everything, I guess. Yeah. So they're trying to kill the Wandering Emperor. We'll just play our other Wandering Emperor. I mean, barring a... I'm not really sure we could even top deck to get out of this. We're just treading water here as we do what we can to survive. I think the best option here is to take out Adeline. Try and at least get that off the battlefield. And opponent with Void Rend anyway, so... What can we do here? Not much. I don't think we die though. We'll go down to 2. Oh no, go down to 5. And we draw a Spirit Sisters. Cool. So, not the greatest of games. Definitely shows some shortcomings of the deck there. But these things happen, I guess. Just going to exile the creature here and let them kill us. I guess this is a neat little trick that we didn't really get a chance to explore, but you can sacrifice one Wandering Emperor to bring back the other Wandering Emperor. Doesn't really do much. Opponent with another Void Rend. Alright, so they absolutely trounced us in that game, but we'll take the defeat and we'll move on to the next one. Alright, on the draw here, and this looks like a pretty good hand actually. We would like to draw a Swamp though to get this cut down on, but we will play our planes and draw a Spirit Sisters call. So we've got all the pieces we need as opponent with Azusa's Many Journeys. So a Simic style ramp deck for our opponent. Get to play our Bankbuster. And opponent is ramping, it seems. Although they miss a land drop. Alright, so that's got to be good for us there. We don't have a lot going on ourselves, but we can definitely play this wedding announcement, start creating some 1/1s. And fingers crossed we start drawing some lands. Opponent with a joint exploration, kicked. So they're trying to draw a land off the top. Which they do. And it's one of their tap lands. Alright, so that was the perfect draw, I think, for them. And Azusa's Many Journeys becomes a 3/3. And Topiary Stomp for our opponent. So they are ramping pretty well. Now, I think I saw this deck played the other day. So it's some kind of Simic Hullbreaker deck. So that's something to be mindful of. But we missed the land drop again. And yeah, so not hitting this 4th and 5th land drop for us is going to be a bit of a problem here. Opponent also misses land drop. And we just draw a Dusk Mangler, so we're going to draw a game with our Bankbuster. Okay, so this is slightly irritating that we haven't found a mana. But we'll just hang in there. Opponent's not doing much themselves anyway. Saying that, they draw 3 cards with Silver Scrutiny. So wedding announcement becomes wedding festivity, pumps the team, and we have to discard a hand size. So discard both our Manglers here. Seems to be a really good way to discard cards in our deck today. Another Azusa's Many Journeys for our opponent. They're now up to 7 mana. And they're going to attack us with their 4/4. And yeah, we're going to snap that block off. Definitely trade 2 of these 2/2s for that 4/4 there. And we finally draw our 4th mana, so things are starting to look up. They do have 7 mana themselves though. That's the amount of mana I'm worrying about with Titans and Hullbreaker Horrors, etc. Opponent gains another 3 life, so that's a lot of life. World Spell. Alright, so this is a pretty good card where they're going to be able to search the top 7 cards of the library, put a permanent cards into their hands for 2 chapters, and then on the 3rd chapter they get to put 2 permanents from their hand onto the battlefield, 2 non-sagas. We get to drop our Wandering Emperor in their end step though, and nothing to exile, so we'll just create a 2/2 here. And we draw another land, so finally we're starting to find our land drops. So we get to draw with our Bankbuster, which is going to create a pilot, but also importantly give us a treasure, which is something we're definitely going to need. And we get to put a 1/1 counter on one of our 3/3s or 2/2s, and we get to start doing some damage to our opponent. So we finally get them down to 21 life. And Rite of Oblivion, this world spell, is an absolute must. Can't have them searching for these big creatures anymore, even though they can cast this Hullbreaker Horror. I think we're okay. They're going to need follow-up spells. Normally they would use like Vortexes or Fading Hopes or Considers. So that's what we've got to be worried about. They're flickering over their Hullbreaker Horror. Clearly it has flash, so it's not something they're probably going to want to cast right now. They've seen us use Rite of Oblivion, so they're probably worried about that. And you know they have a Titan anyway, so they get to cast that, and then as it enters the battlefield, destroy a artifact or enchantment, and they're going to take out our Wedding Announcement, which is fine, and they get to create a 4/4. They realise that putting a shield counter on the Titan is probably not the best, as we do have a Rite of Oblivion. They've got to think we're going to be using that this coming turn. So we'll block this 3/3 with our 2/2. It does untap 3 lands from our opponent with the Lightness of the Seeker's ability. Nice little value there from our opponent. And we draw another land. Alright, so we need to think this through carefully. So we get to play our Spirit Sister's Call here, and it resolves. We'll go through our turn. Opponent's definitely holding priority with something. We don't have any decent attacks here, but we can exile this 3/3 with our Wandering Emperor, so at least we get that off the battlefield. And yeah, our Spirit Sister's Call is going to trigger, and we get to sacrifice our 1/1 to bring back the Mangler, but the opponent has been holding a Fading Hope, so they get to Fading Hope our 1/1, but in response we get to crew with our Bankbuster, and as we don't target the Bankbuster during all of this, the Bankbuster can be sacrificed. Oh, but opponent has another Fading Hope. Alright, so it's just one of those things. They were holding 2 Fading Hopes, so I'm kind of glad that they played them then, rather than hold them up for the Hullbreaker Horror. That would have been way worse, I think. Unless they've obviously got more 1-cost spells in their hand. I'm not overly concerned with where we are right now though. We're still in a pretty comfortable life total, and if we can get this creature out of the graveyard, I think we're going to be just fine. We can deal with the Rhino with the Touch the Spirit Realm. It's going to flicker the 4/4. As it's a token, it's not going to come back. And yeah, we're going to be 1 Wandering Emperor down here, but our life total is still on 16. So not too bad at the moment, as we draw a Liliana. Well, we're going to now start doing our own combo. So let's play the Cruelty of Gix here. Opponent could flash out their Hullbreaker Horror. Had they had those Fading Hopes, they could definitely be countering this spell. But they let it resolve, and we get to go straight to chapter 3 and find our Dusk Mangler. It's going to make the opponent sacrifice a creature. There it is. You're going to sacrifice a creature, and they're going to have to discard a card, lose 4 life. They get rid of their Azusa, and they are discarding a War Chief. Now we get to activate Spirit Sister's Call's ability at end step, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to sacrifice our Dusk Mangler, bring back the other Dusk Mangler, and the opponent's going to need to sacrifice a creature. They bring out Hullbreaker Horror, so they're going to have to sacrifice a Titan here or a Hullbreaker Horror. They get rid of the Titan. unsurprisingly, and the card they were holding was another horror. So had they kept those Fading Hopes open earlier, they might have been able to counter our spell there. Anyway, they attack for a 7 damage, not taking that, and we draw another Spirit Sisters Call. So how many Spirit Sisters Call is too many? Well, I think more than one is. So we have Liliana here, and we'll play that instead. This will force the opponent to sacrifice their Hullbreaker, and they don't. They just scoop it up instead. So yeah, that showed the Dusk Mangler discard effect there. So thanks for watching. This deck did surprisingly well. I always thought Spirit Sisters was an okay card, but if it pairs with a decent E.T.B like Dusk Mangler, you just get so much value out of it. I did play Dusk Mangler in every colour combination before this video I could think of, but Orzhov seemed to do the best for me. I did think Toxrill was going to be the star of the deck, but no. You may want to put some board wipes in though if you do plan to make this deck yourself, as you can't always rely on Toxrill doing that for you. But anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, subscribe if you can, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye.